So, as promised, today I have a very special guest joining me on the Format Podcast. Here today to talk Major League Baseball. LeBron James and Tom Brady is a legend in the sports journalism field, 30-plus year veteran, Major League Baseball Hall of Fame voter, columnist for multiple newspapers and online publications, now co-host of the Fox Sports One radio show, The Odd Couple with Chris Broussard, and professional antagonist, the one and only Rob Parker. Rob, thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here today.
No, thank you. I appreciate the invite. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it. First thing I wanted to talk to you about this morning, Rob, is something that I never discuss on the podcast, and that's Major League Baseball. I've heard you say on many occasions your most prized possession is your Major League Baseball Hall of Fame vote. So let me tell you this, in all honesty, I'm not a baseball fan. I've tried to get into it, and I just can't. And I think even though I don't fit that demographic, a lot of young people share my feeling on it. And the demographic of baseball fans today reflect that. And I think the biggest problem with the game is probably pace of play. And for me personally, there's just too much downtime, where nothing's happening. So my question for you on that is twofold. Number one, what would you say as a baseball lover to sell me and people like me on your game? And two, what can Major League Baseball do to recapture the attention of the youth and rekindle their interest in the game?
See, the issue I have is I think the statements you've made are just blanket statements that are a national narrative that just don't, and I don't know, you haven't been to baseball games. I go to baseball games all the time, and there are plenty of young people there. More young kids are playing baseball today than ever before. So, it's not, yes, a lot of people don't have the attention span and they just want something, they're watching clips, but for baseball, there's a fabric to it. There's a game, there's a thinking man. It is the best quality time you can spend with somebody. So if you go to a ball game with somebody, if I go to a football game or a basketball game, I really can't interact with you because the game is on and it's kind of like that. Baseball is totally different. So we're sitting there, me and you are having this great conversation. It's the only time you're going to spend 3 hours with somebody and have their attention. But also there's this whole game that's unfolding in front of you as you go on. There's a love affair. The thing that people don't understand about baseball is baseball sells more tickets than the NBA, NFL, NHL and Major League Soccer combined. And it's not just because there are more games. It's because there's a whole thing that goes with the atmosphere of being out at the park. It's something that I grew up. I grew up in a neighborhood with 11 guys, 9 black, 2 Puerto Rican. That's all we did is play baseball. And I know I'm an older generation, but it's just for people who use the time excuse. I've covered the NFL since 1987.
Right.
I've been to so many bad football games. If I can tell, this whole notion that every football game is exciting or whatever, it's just false. It's just not. I've been to dog football games where they're awful. So I think in every sport, you could do that in the NBA. People can say, why watch the first 3 quarters? I could wait till the last 4 minutes of the game.
Right. So sorry about it. No, I have heard that the experience of being at a baseball game live is much better than the television product. Do you think that has something to do with what you said about baseball outselling all the other sports combined?
Yeah, because my thing is every baseball game is on television, right? So if every game is available to fans, that gives them a reason not to go. Do you? And you got to remember, baseball is during the summer when the weather's great, and there's so many other things that you can do. So maybe you might not get it. And here's the other part that's the biggest fallacy of baseball, and you should look this up. While the national ratings aren't great, and I'm talking about national because when you talk about trying to put on one baseball game and make it important when there's 162, it's just different. But when you look at the nightly ratings in a major city, baseball, say the 30 markets, baseball will have the #1 primetime ratings. I'm talking about between 8 and 11 o'clock. in 26 of their 30 markets. They're the number one. That's why if you go Google the TV deals that baseball has, is because the numbers are unmatched locally. Maybe not a hit if there was only one baseball game available, on a Saturday, it might be different. But now you can watch every game. So there's no reason that I have to be glued in on Monday Night Baseball. There's no football is in a totally different arena because they play fewer games. So one baseball game's ratings can't be equal to one football game's ratings because there are 10 times as many games. You would have to take 10 baseball games ratings to match it to one football. Do you see? 16 to 160. It can never be equal.
The math just doesn't work out. Yeah.
It doesn't work out. So that's what people say, oh, well, the NFL used to have a blackout rule. And I'm not trying to bash the NFL and the other sports. I'm just being real. They used to have a blackout rule. They had to sell 85% of the stadium in order for the games to be on. Do you know why it was lifted? They couldn't sell 85% of the tickets. So people didn't want to go to the games, and the games would be blacked out, and they would lose TV revenue. So they lifted that. That's what they had to do. The NBA, for all the greatness that's, and the players and whatnot, the NBA used to be on tape delay.
Yeah.
CBS would put the finals.
Yeah.
And it used to come on after the 11 o'clock news. Like, these are real things that have happened as time gone on. And baseball just signed a new deal with TBS, with Turner for $1.1 billion.
Yeah, I heard about that.
That's just national money that's split up. They're local TV packages. The Phillies signed a $500 million. You could just go look at the numbers and you cannot believe like how big. Because when you talk about television, the most important thing in television is live sporting events, right? Everything else I could DVR, watch on demand. I don't have to watch it. So as an advertiser, putting advertisements on those things aren't nearly as good for me, because there's a good chance people might not even watch my ads or skip past them, right? I don't even know when they're watching. But sporting events have to be watched live, and that's why there's so much value on, live broadcast and baseball, because they have so many more games than the other sports. That's what generates so much revenue. Last year, for people who think that baseball is dying or going away, baseball has had 17 straight years of revenue growth. 17.
Wow.
And last year, they topped $11 billion in revenue. Baseball's fine. It's never been healthier, whether or not their ratings, national ratings, match up with the NFL. I just think that that's apples and oranges and not a fair comparison.
Fair enough. And convincing pitch. So
see, you never heard that, because most people don't. No. You know what I mean? Those are real numbers. I'm not just saying it because I love baseball. You can Google all those numbers. To be number one in prime time in 26 of the 30 largest markets in the country. At one point, just in Detroit, when the Tigers had a really good team and they were hot, at one point, the Tigers ratings, television ratings between 7 and 11 or 8 and 11 was at 8.1, right? 8.1, that's on their regional cable. NBC was like a 2.3. Fox was a 1. This is up against network television stuff that people you would think want to watch more than a baseball game. Not true.
Right. Okay, so let's switch gears, Rob. The NBA is nearing the finish of its season. LeBron James is once again in contention for a championship, and a lot of people in the media and fans in general have LeBron as the greatest player ever. I know that you have him as number 2 all time. For me, he's not even in my top 5. And real quick, my top 5 is MJ, Magic, Bird, Kareem, and Olajuwon in that order. Now, I personally believe that LeBron just has too many holes in his game and too many big stage losses to be moved ahead of anybody in the top 5 and most of the top 10. So my question is, why do you have him so high on that all-time list?
All you got to do is, yes, he's had his failures, 6 losses. I call him the Fofo.
Yeah.
the finals failure of all time, because he's
Mm-hmm.
lost more championships than any other finals regular season MVP. And
Correct.
for people who always go, what about Jerry West? I hate to break it to you, Jerry
He
West never
wasn't an
won an
MVP.
MVP, but
Right.
people don't do their homework, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
Jerry West is 1-8. I get it
Yeah.
in the finals, but he was never an MVP in the league.
Right.
As far as LeBron, his numbers, whether you don't, look at him as he's stat packing or whatever you want to say, his numbers are undeniable. He has a chance to be the all-time leading scorer and pass Kareem if he plays another couple of years. So when you look at his numbers, it's hard to deny what his numbers are and what he's been able to do. So that's why I have him second, because those numbers are so strong. And then obviously, if he gets to the finals again, that'll be 10 trips to the finals. Whether it's in the watered down East or not, he played within the competition of what was presented to him. And I think it's hard to deny that even if he loses, even if he doesn't win and he has 6 or 7 finals losses, it's still hard to deny. So I look at coming in at the age that he did, the feats of, winning a certain amount, winning. He didn't just win one championship or something like that. That would be an argument. So he won multiple championships. He was a part of a team that came back from a 3-1 deficit, which had never happened. That's another feather in his cap. So stuff like that, when I look at those kind of places, marks in his career, I think he's second overall, but but a distant second. I just don't look at Michael Jordan, who I covered, and I was covering the NBA on a daily basis when Michael played. I was in Cleveland when he made the shot over Craig Elo. I'm sitting courtside at center court. I used to look at the sports writer to my right or left and go, can you believe what we're watching? I mean, we knew even way back when how special this guy was, and we were fortunate because David Stern had moved the press from up top down to courtside so that we could hear the game and write about it in better light. They don't understand that when you have when you have more insight and what's going on, it transfers over into what you're writing and talking about. And that's really, it was really important for us. But I got to see all that. So that's why I have him second, a distant second to Michael Jordan, because I don't think we'll ever see anybody win at that clip. Not only was he 6 for 6, won all 6 MVPs, I can list about 10 Hall of Famers who got shut out during his time.
Yes,
and that's the problem
that's
with
a big
LeBron,
one.
as far as, everybody ate during the LeBron era. Who didn't win a championship? Everybody won.
For me, I look at LeBron, and I think I heard Chris Broussard say this too, that he's closer to Wilt. So I see the statistical dominance that you mentioned, but Wilt is also 33% in the NBA Finals, and very few people have him as the greatest of all time, right? So I look at that. And then I look at also with LeBron, this is very important to me. I'm old enough to be now in my 4th decade of watching NBA basketball. I'm going to be 42 in a couple of weeks, next week. So I'm old enough now to have seen basketball from the mid-'80s all the way until now. And what's a big thing to me, yes, LeBron has put up tremendous numbers, but he's also played in an era where the rules have literally been changed to proliferate offensive production. He shoots a lot more threes than Mike did, for those who want to argue that, well, he scores a lot and he's not even a scorer. He shoots a lot more threes.
It's a different game now, right?
Right. And one of the biggest things for me, when Michael Jordan averaged 37 a game, and like you said, you were covering this, he only made 12 three-pointers that entire season. And he was playing, Michael Jordan throughout his career played against at least, he played against 12 of the all-time shot blockers on the shot blocking list. And he's going to the rim. He's going to the rim in a clogged paint where you had real power forwards and all these centers, Olajuwon and Kareem and Patrick Ewing and Alonzo Mourning, Shaq, so on and so.
Defensively, you could touch him.
Yes.
You could steer him defensively and touch him. Now,
correct,
you can't touch anybody. If you touch somebody, it's a foul.
Right.
And that's definitely an advantage when you're LeBron's size and has strength. So there's no doubt about it.
So all these things are things I take into account, and why I take the statistical production of LeBron with a grain of salt, and I can't use that as, a feather in his cap to put him ahead.
But the only
of these
problem
other
I would push back on you is everybody could play with those rules and everybody hadn't done what he's done. So it's easy to say he's had an advantage because of the system, but there could be 3 or 4 other LeBrons putting up. There's no reason that other guys playing in other cities with the same rules couldn't be putting up the numbers that LeBron has. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have to give him some credit that it is his ability, not just the rules being changed in his favor.
There's some of that. And finally, on the LeBron topic, the last thing I thought was really interesting, since he joined the Miami Heat, the organizations he's played for, the Heat, the back to Cleveland, and now the Lakers, his organizations have made 42 trades to facilitate what he wanted. No other all-time great gets the benefit of that. Now, you can say it's the player empowerment era that he helped usher in, blah, blah, blah. But what I see is he can only win a certain way with very specific types of players around him. So you get all of that.
Right,
it's too much for me to place him at number 2 or even top 5.
No, I get that. And for that, those are his minions who always cry. Whenever he wins, they talk about how great he is. And when he loses, they always say he doesn't have anybody.
Right.
So their argument is LeBron is the GOAT, and if he loses, anybody else on the team is a scapegoat. If they don't win this year, they'll blame the roster and blame AD or blame. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Rondo's washed up. I mean, this is the narrative we'll hear no matter what. So I get that part. I still think he's a great player, just not the greatest, and that's my argument for a lot of his fans. And they can believe if you think. And it's not like Michael just won 6 finals. I mean, he's the all-time leading playoff scorer. You know what I mean?
Well, I think LeBron actually passed him maybe a year ago. Yeah, LeBron passed him on that.
Average?
Oh, no, not average. Oh, total points. Total
average,
points.
not points per the game. I'm talking about average.
Yeah. Okay.
Scoring average, all time.
Yep.
You talk about being a defensive player, what he was able to do. He led the league in scoring 10 years in a row. I mean, I could just – so it's not just, he's 6-0. Well, if that's the case, then Bill Russell is the best. No, that's not the conversation. And Bill Russell played in a totally different era where there were only 10 or 12 NBA teams, and it wasn't the process of having to go through. It's just like you talk about baseball, and you talk about Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra winning 10 World Series or going to 10 World Series. It's totally different. Back then, if you had the best team, there were no playoffs. You went straight to the World Series. So if the Yankees had the best team for 10 years, you know what I mean? Like they would be the top of the American League, and they would automatically go to the World Series. When you look at Derek Jeter winning 5 championships, and you got to go through 3 rounds of playoffs to get there just to win, it tells you even how much, you know what I mean? How hard it is to win. It's a different – so you have to look at those things. And it's not to discredit Bill Russell and what they did. The Celtics, those teams, go back in sports and go look at that era. Yankees won every year.
Yep.
Celtics won every year.
Yep.
Montreal Canadiens won every year. And the Green Bay Packers. Go look. Because there was no free agency. So if you had a great team, it stayed together. So how in the world, you were already great. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it's a little different to look at things like that. When free agency wasn't involved.
Got it. And finally, I know you got to run, so before I let you get up out of here, we'll jump to the NFL. And your favorite NFL topic, Tom Brady, a.k.a. the GOAT. I know what you think about that.
He started more like the luckiest of all time.
Right. He started off the season obviously not looking great against the Saints in a loss. He bounced back last week. Did he bounce back? Yeah, they won. Short menu, right, Rob?
Okay. I just want to make sure, but Tom Brady's been a turnover machine. He's got 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles, and that's what I thought that was what he was supposed to clean up.
I was going to point to that. I think that's very interesting.
I mean, that right? They said, once he gets there, they'll eliminate. That's what Jameis Winston. That's why the team couldn't win. But Brady's had 3 picks. I mean, in the first 2 games.
Yeah, no, I thought that was interesting. But my question for you on Brady real quick is, how much of this do you feel is an adjustment period to everything being brand new? We know he's been in the same place for 20 years. And now he didn't have a preseason, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but it means something, getting live game reps with new teammates, new coach, new system, blah, blah, blah. And how much of it is him just being 43 years old?
See, I think it has to do with him being 43. I don't expect him to get better as the year goes on. I just don't. Not at 43 years old. Things don't get better. They get worse. That's why they make Viagra for people, you know?
Right.
So I'm not really buying into this notion that he's going to be at the top of his game at the end of the season or whatever. Sure, there's some adjustment period that goes on, but they're asking him, Bruce Arians, and we had Warren Moon on a radio show, the Hall of Fame quarterback. Yeah. He made the greatest point of all. Bruce Arians quarterbacks struggle with interceptions because they like to throw the ball downfield.
Mm-hmm.
That's not Tom Brady's strength. It's about the dinking and dunking and getting it to people who get yards after the catch, and stuff like that. So if Bruce Arians is going to ask Tom Brady that's why Jameis Winston had a ton of interceptions. They like to air the ball out. And there were other quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, and you know what I mean? Like, you could go on and on and on. So the point is, I don't know if it's just reps and getting used to people or this style of football that they like to run in Tampa. Is that going to be a workout for Tom Brady with his arm and lack of arm strength? So I'm not convinced. I don't have them making the playoffs. I think that division will be tough. I think it'll be a tough road. I don't think anybody will be surprised by Tampa. Everybody made a big deal about Gronk. He's been a non-factor. Shady McCoy, you know, they put the band back together with a lot of old timers. Mm-hmm. They got young players and got guys, you know, skill position who are good. I'm not knocking them. Mm-hmm. But the Bucs haven't made the playoffs in 12 years. And Bruce Arians hadn't had a winning record since 2015. I don't think it's as a layup as most people think. And last year, I was the one who stood on Colin Cowherd's couch and told everybody that the Browns weren't going to make the playoffs.
You did.
Because everybody bought in and thought, oh, look at the weapons they have and look at how well they won 7 games the year before. They're going to take that next step, and it never happened. Mm-hmm. So I got the Bucs being on the outside looking in, and Tom Brady getting older and not better as time goes on.
Okay. And the last quick point, I know you're an Aaron Rodgers guy, and I've heard you say on multiple occasions he's the greatest thrower of the football you've ever seen, et cetera. I've had this argument a number of times with a number of people, and I feel like Dan Marino, John Elway, Warren Moon should all be in that discussion. But the difference is, and again, it goes to errors statistically, back then you could hit quarterbacks, you could hit wide receivers. If you notice, all those great quarterbacks, except maybe Joe Montana, are like top 10 in interceptions, right? And have, 60 or sub 60% completion percentage. So I feel like if Dan Marino played today, he would have put all those records out of reach. What's your thought on Aaron Rodgers versus those guys in terms of being great throwers of the football?
Yeah, those guys were all great. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I just talked to too many. I've watched Aaron Rodgers when I was in Detroit, working locally. I covered, most of his games, all of his games with the Lions, and saw the guy up close. And the way he throws the football, and then talking to NFL, DBs and wide receivers and people who played, all of them say the way he throws the ball. And we've seen that so far this year. Everybody said, talking about his demise. And if you watch some of the throws, they're incredible. But this is the thing I look at. And you're right, the style of the game, and they try to protect the quarterback. But they used to do that too. When I was watching the NFL, I remember in the grasp used to be a sack. All you had to do was grab the guy's jersey. You didn't have to even pull him down, and they used to credit that a sack. Because there was one year when 7 or 8 starting quarterbacks got hurt in the first couple of weeks, and the NFL was trying to save these guys from being not, hurt and not played. But I just look at Aaron Rodgers had the greatest quarterback rating of any quarterback who's ever played in the NFL. To me, that says something. And he also has the greatest touchdown to interception ratio, which is 4-1. And the next guy is like Tom Brady at 2, maybe 2.5 or something to 1. It's not even close when you talk about all these people. And that's why I put him at the top. If he were to finish his career with another 2 Super Bowls, and he's 3-0 and compiles all these numbers, I think people would take another look at him and think of him as the greatest quarterback ever. I mean, if he could, win a few more Super Bowls, win a couple more, he's won 2 MVPs. If he won a couple more MVPs and a couple more Super Bowls, and then continue with the greatest quarterback rating and greatest touchdown to interception ratio, I think people would have to think of him in that light. But as far as I've seen in my 35 years of covering sports, I've never seen a better quarterback.
And there you have it. Rob Parker, I know you got to get going. Thanks so much for taking the time out. Busy schedule, hardest working man in the business, as you like to say. And we really appreciate it here on the Format Podcast. Hope to talk to you again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks. It was a lot of fun. And good luck to you, and peace.
Thank you so much, Rob.